Willie Phillips, mate, good to see you. How are you?
Mate, well, how are you?
Very well, mate. Before we started this, I was thinking I've only ever known you as Will Phillips from Bresic Whitney. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
now the last few years, you're Will Phillips from McGrath, and
It's
so
spin out.
it is a bit of a spin out, mate. But how are you? You going well?
And I'm really good. I think also for you, I've only ever known you as Ivan, probably my boss most of my life. So to see you on Zoom in Austin, it is actually a bit of a spin out, but it's really cool. So lots of
And
changes.
lots of change. I never felt like I was your boss. I always felt like we were partners. And so, for
Yeah.
those of you listening, Will Phillips needs no introduction. He's a friend, a former business partner, one of the best agents in Australia. He certainly helped myself enormously in my career, and he was instrumental in the success of Bresic Whitney. Um, I think we did about 14 years together, Willie.
Yeah.
Le-
Yeah. Yeah.
You,
Some good times.
you did leasing. I still remember when you were leasing. You were a young agent. You worked in Shannon Whitney's team. You came across to Bresic Whitney Darlinghurst at a time when we really needed you. And I still remember when we went to a pub in Surrey Hills and we said, "How can we get this Darlinghurst team doing 50 sales a month?" Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and we sat there and we strategized it, and we just lost 3 or 4 staff because of my poor leadership at the time. No, and I remember that, and I was so happy to have you in my corner, and
Yeah.
that and we could
That's
partner
cool.
up, yeah, and made a couple. I
I do
think
remember that. I actually forgot about that, but now that you bring it up, I do because we were in Glebe at the time because I was working with Shannon, who needed to head that office up.
mm,
Uh, but going back in leasing, I was doing it for 2 years, and I really wanted to get into sales. Obviously, Alex was doing it, and then I always looked up to you and Shannon. And then I got the advice from you that all good agents have done leasing first. So I was actually doing work experience at the time, and that's when I wanted to get into sales. I didn't want to do leasing, and you said any top agent, and you'll probably tell me what maybe probably what I needed to hear because I wasn't mature enough to do sales. I was definitely too young, and best thing I ever did.
and you were a great leasing agent. You did amazing things in your early years in sales. Surrey Hills was your core market.
Yeah, Surrey Hills, Redfern, Darlinghurst.
Yeah. Will, ladies and gentlemen, was the number one agent in Australia under 30 years old several years ago. Now, Will, 6 years ago,
Yeah,
several years ago.
yeah. I'm
But that
38.
was
So
McClay, I think, was number three on the list. You were number one, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Awesome. A few years ago, well, 4.5 years ago, you and I left the business at the same time, which was interesting.
yeah,
I know it was a
yeah.
big move for me, but it was also a big move for you. So why did you go? Someone who's so established, you've been there so long, your surname's synonymous in the industry. Why did you make that move up to Byron Bay, mate?
Man, I think it probably dawned on me. I think having kids was a huge change for me. In terms of probably shifting my values and my priorities. I think in my 20s, um, real estate's really good for your 20s
Mm.
because you can just grind,
Yeah,
like without missing out on too much life. I think you can set yourself up really well. You can grind, you can make really good money, you can make a name for yourself. And if you do it smart, I think then in your 30s and 40s and 50s, you've got such a good foundation and a good name that you can do things like I've just done.
yes.
So I think in my 20s, that was my focus. It was just grind, work hard, probably party a bit too hard if I'm honest, but it is what it is. It wouldn't change anything. But when I had kids, I probably realized that, well, actually what happened was, so we had Audrey and then we had a house in Queen's Park. I'd bought 2 or 3 houses and done quite well. And we had a house in Queen's Park and the market changed and we sold for less, right? And I was really embarrassed, like an agent and property in Sydney doesn't drop,
Yeah.
right? And then I'm an agent, and so my ego was hit, and I had to sell because, mate, I was driving a Porsche 911. Renata had a Range Rover, and the market was shit for like 3 months, and all of a sudden I couldn't afford it. Like I realized I was basically a fraud. I was like trying to live the image of an agent, which I'd done for 10 years, without any save, like I barely, you know, I didn't put much thought into long-term planning and saving because I didn't have kids and I was probably just selfish, looking after myself and having a good time. So when that happened, I was pretty embarrassed, but at the same time, it really highlighted for me, like, why am I working so hard to project this image when I really don't give a shit? And if things change, I can't afford it, so I shouldn't be doing it anyway.
Yes.
And I think that combined with kids, combined with it probably highlighted the most valuable commodity is time now for me instead of earning money. So that probably set something in motion where I'm thinking, why am I grinding so hard
Yes.
to have such little fulfillment? I barely get to see my kids. I work every Saturday. I'm switched on all night. I get, you know, 8 weeks holiday, 4 weeks Europe, you know, end of the year, like every other agent. And I just started to question what it was all about. So I think that's probably where I decided that I didn't want to follow the same path as everyone else, and I wanted to satisfy my curiosity doing something different.
Mate, hats off to you. Like, I was thinking about it before today. Like, I only know a couple, not that well. You're really the only agent I know who's excelled in one market and gone to a completely different market and excelled there. So, like, we're going to talk about that shortly. But
Thanks.
I know you travelled for 12 months and you ended up in Byron Bay. I went to your wedding in Byron Bay, so that was always a special spot for you, wasn't it?
Always a special spot. Just probably the having young kids, and because my parents live in the Southern Highlands, and every time I would go down and visit them and my kids, I'd see what being in nature and having space would do for me and the kids.
Yes.
So, you know, instead of the hamster wheel, the rat race, the traffic, the concrete, I don't know. I just thought we're so fortunate in what we do for our job. And you always used to say it in our sales meetings. You used to say, we're fucking so lucky to be able to sell in a beautiful city like Sydney. And I completely agree. That Sydney, I probably, you know, lost my love affair with Sydney, and I wanted open space, and Byron's got a good climate. It's got good property, and beautiful properties, and good values. I mean, so it was a pretty easy choice.
Good on you. So it was really it was a lifestyle decision, a family decision, more time, you know, in your day. I think it's for anyone listening. Like, I think it's really cool because for Will to walk away from that takes a lot of courage, and you know, to launch into a whole new market with no database, after creating that, because he's prioritizing family and time and a different lifestyle. I think it's great, mate. So well done.
Thanks, mate. I'll probably just finish off by saying on that, there's a saying that Jim Carrey says, which is, I think it was Jim Carrey, and he basically says, I wish everyone would become rich or famous or whatever, because they realize that's actually not what it is. And I think when I had all those nice things and then I had to sell and I downgraded, and I was actually happier when I simplified my life, it kind of highlighted to me, I'm like, I've actually had all that stuff, and all it does is make me want more. The more you want, it just kind of manifests into needing and wanting more. It's like a never-ending loop. So I think that to me was a really good thing, because it made me realize actually that's not the answer. So anyway.
No, I went through a similar thing. Well, I know exactly what you're talking about, having all these things.
And I don't want to preach either, because you know, it's nice having nice things. So if someone's, you know, that's their thing, that's cool. Just for me, that's what I highlighted. And I knew that if I made those financial commitments of a mortgage and nice stuff, I needed to work my ass off to pay for those, which meant less time with the kids. So it's like,
you're sacrificing something for that. The feedback, forever I've known you, the feedback that we always have from competitors and people in the industry, everyone liked you. And they liked you because you always had time for them, and you always had time for our staff. And that's a really good leadership quality. I actually think, you know, your coaching and leadership is pretty special because you really care about people. And so, yeah, you do, mate. And so when you transferred those skills from Sydney and you end up in Byron, was that nerve-wracking? Like, did you have any doubts that you may not crack it? Like, or did you just know within yourself that?
Mate, I think I wasn't nervous. I was excited, man. Like, I think the thought of starting again with everything I knew and starting fresh and not doing things that I did the first time and doing things that I should have done. I think just the excitement was there. And oh, mate, I'll be honest, I was super confident. Like, mate, I know I'm good at what I do. I know my battle I knew would always be how much can I stop the addiction of being the best and selling heaps and working crazy hours.
Yeah.
I'm confident in my skills, so I knew I would be successful to a level. I think, you know, I've had the training from the best, so I know what to apply. So because real estate to me is no secret what you need to do. So I think it was more, you know, do I get sucked back into that, you know, that addictive deal mentality, which still happens. You know, I'm still dealing with that.
Yeah, you're saying that part of you that's been a big part of you, which is the competitiveness of you and wanting to grind and, you know, achieve goals, and, you know, how much of that did you want versus remembering that it was a lifestyle move?
Yeah, that's right. It is, and I'm constantly, like I said, I'm reminding myself of that and trying to work at that. So it's just it's a never-ending thing. You're always trying to even kilter.
Yeah, look at it, consider it. How old are you now, mate?
38.
Good. And you went to Byron 4 years ago.
Went to Byron 4 years ago. I think with the other thing, with the benefit of moving to somewhere like Byron, to probably give more context to how stressed I was, I think the financial decisions we make, they really determine the stress levels we have. Like I said, in Sydney, I had all that shit, and that meant, you know, overheads were up here. Because I moved to Byron and the price values were less, I had money saved up after the house I sold, after I sold out of the business.
Yeah.
So my mortgage was really low. So if I didn't do well, if I made a tenth of what I made in Sydney, I can still live. There's nothing to worry about. I've got my health and the kids' health. You know, things aren't going to fall apart. So I think that, to me, because I didn't come in trying to buy a fancy house and all that stuff,
yes,
it was everything was a lot easier.
Yeah. And have you been happier that way with less pressure?
Yeah, so much happier.
Yeah.
So much happier.
Yeah.
I think in my 20s, I was always living above my means. And now I'm trying always to try and live below my means.
Great.
Yeah.
Love it. I mean, I love hearing this stuff. This is stuff that I talk about with my coaching, and like I've done a similar thing to you. Like I live in Austin, Texas. It's like a third of the price of New York or LA, and it's very cheap. It's almost, I've always done what you've done at Byron. I've done this in Austin, Texas, which is similar.
Yeah.
Let's go back to these skills, because you've basically transferred your skills. And I've mentioned to people, I've gone, look, if Will Phillips can go from there and be the #1 agent in this competitive market and move from there to a whole new market, and within 2 years become the #1 agent there, that's a skills thing, right?
Yeah.
So let's just talk about that. And I've heard you on some other interviews, and we've had conversations off air and stuff, so I kind of know. But for people who are watching, like, if you're doing, you talk about skills, what are the important skills? Like if someone says, how do I get from 0 to 30 sales? How would you explain that?
So I reckon a couple of things. The most important skill to me in real estate, easily the most important skill, is qualification.
Yeah.
If you know how to qualify someone, the rest becomes a lot easier, right? Then if you pair skill with what's the word? Desire, hunger. You need that in real estate. It is one of those industries. If you want to, particularly at the start, now it's a lot easier for me. But if you want to come up and do a 9 to 5 when everyone else is doing, 8 till 6 and Saturdays, like it's hard, because really they're just doing more hours and they're going to get more done.
Yes.
It's one of the negatives of real estate if you want balance. But so yeah, I think, but if you've got the right hunger and desire, then if you can qualify people and find opportunities, every person you speak to, I remember the analogy I came up with was that if you do an open home and you have 20 people through, all of them could have a $30,000 price tag on their head, 2% commission if they own a property at $1.5 million. And if you're not talking to that person and finding out what they're doing, you're literally letting every person's 30 grand.
Yeah.
So for me, I remember McClay, who was in my team at the time, when I went out on my own, he was just a young'un, he was from leasing, and we would play a game that every single person we spoke to met, open homes, we would find out their whole life, like their story in terms of real estate.
Yeah. And then so you're saying,
yeah,
through your calls and you're prospecting, let's just call it that, or meeting people at open home, or going for an old callback book, which I know you did, Byron, you're just trying to find, this is a buyer, so I'm going to put them in my buyer bucket. This is a pipeline seller, so I better put them in my pipeline seller. Or this is just a passive owner, and I'm going to put them over here, and I'm still going to communicate with them because one day they're going to do something. So those three buckets, you qualify people and place them in one of those buckets. Yeah,
that's right. And then those buckets are interrelated. I speak to someone yesterday, and I put him in the pipeline seller bucket at 2 million. And then I speak to a buyer today, and I put him in the buyer bucket at 2 million. I go, oh shit, that could suit the guy from yesterday. I just spoke to a buyer that said they've got 2 million. They want a Queenslander with a pool, 800 square meters. I know it's early. Would you say, like, just, you know, it's so simple, but if you're not organized and you're not qualifying, you can't do that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say the same skills that you had in Sydney, you've just applied the same skills in a new market, and because someone would say, oh, but this is a different market, like what works there?
That's probably the most common question I get. You moved to Byron, and within 12 months you were the top agent. You know, like how did you do that? Or you're one of the top agents, literally. And I didn't know anyone here. We literally don't have any friends or family here. Like, we knew no one. So
well done.
What's that?
Well done. I think it's awesome.
And the answer was, it was just the little things that we preach. All I did, like, someone sends an inquiry, I call them. I don't email. Like, I never want to be on my emails. I want to be on the phones. I'm asking questions. I'm putting them in groups. I'm getting indoors. I'm showing them that I'm on the ball. I'm giving them choices about buyers, sellers, all that stuff. So it's yeah, you're right. It's what I did in Sydney, just all over again.
Yeah. So you're saying if agents have got qualifications, the most important skill. So when you employ an associate or an agent in your team, you really quite strong on ensuring and coaching them through qualification, right?
Yeah. So I think just to go back. So when I started, I put on a PA before I even had a listing.
Yes.
Right. So, which people in here thought was batshit crazy, but it's like, I want to be doing dollar productive things.
Yes.
And like, it probably goes back to the confidence that I said. I knew that I'd be able to, I knew I could do it. Yep. So why would I want to be doing admin? Yep. So she set me back, you know, financially, but it was an investment because I'm a big believer if you're employing someone before you need them.
Yeah.
If you know you're going to need someone, do it before that you get to that point, because it can take, particularly here, it can take 3-6 months to find someone.
Yeah. And then you have to train them as well.
Then you got to train them, and then I put on Pete. Peter, he was in car sales. He'd never done real estate, and that's all he does is he just did buy work, because that taught him how to qualify. Now he's getting his own listings because he can ask questions. Questions is what we do in listing appointments. It's what we do when we negotiate. It's what we do when we find leads. That's what I mean by qualification.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got to say, like, I've been coaching for about 4 years now, and I've got to say the level that we did things back at BW was a really high level. And that's not that I'm not saying, like, you know, we were amazing or anything like that. I just found that the actual core skills that we focused on, they worked.
Yeah.
And I've watched it over Australia and even New Zealand. I've seen, like, and not being critical, but those core skills of qualifications, dealing with open homes, buyer work, you know, those core ones that made us successful in the early years. They're just, our level of that and our understanding is so high. And so for everyone listening, it's great that I've got Will on today, because he was instrumental in following the system and then leading the system to a whole nother level of buyer work, buyer introductions, off-market sales, creating relationships, you know, qualification. Do you remember, we used to do a lot of training sessions at BW, remember that?
Yeah.
You and I, and a bit of Oddie, every 3 weeks we would do role play in front of 40 people, and we'd choose an agent, and we'd do some qualification of a vendor, of a seller, and then at the next time of a buyer. We used to do that all the time. So
yeah, right, yeah.
Database. Can we just jump onto that? You then start a database with zero. I think a database, along with qualification, every agent has to build an audience. So on that, I was fortunate and I was targeted. So when I moved here, I interviewed 5 agencies. Yes.
and I would only choose one that had an open database.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't want to start zero. Like it's a grind, and I did that. It can take years. So here that they had an ownership database of 5,000, and I said, unless there was a relationship,
Yes.
then there was a lot of people that no one would speak to. Every agency would have that. There'd be so many owners that no one speaks to, but because someone's added it, it's mine. But I'm not going to call them for fucking 3 years. But but here there was a lot of that. But it was like if there's no note, if someone contacted them in the last 12 months, go for it.
Right.
And that's what I did.
So yeah, I'll just stop you on that point. So Will had to choose where he was going to work. He chose an organisation which ended up being McGrath Byron Bay, which had
They had to choose me as well.
They had to choose.
It was mutual, but yeah.
Well, John McGrath did bring you, and he wanted you. And why wouldn't he? But I think it's important that it was an open database. So when people say, "Well, who do I ring?" Will said, "Well, I want contacts to ring in the market," and so he's gone to a place which had an open database, and that was his starting point. So off you go. Will you start? What database system do you use?
Agent Box.
Yeah, and
so I actually started on buyers. I got up at my buyer list quickly because I wanted something to speak to people about.
If I was new to real estate, how many buyers would you suggest I look after?
I'd say build your list up to 40 or 50 and then cull that back to 20 or 30 once you know what a good buyer is.
Yeah. So you started there, and what was the advantage of starting with buyers for you as an agent in a new market?
So I think sales is a confidence game.
Yes.
Right? It's really hard to do something confident, which is why I've always preached product knowledge and buyers. Because when I speak to an owner and they say to me, "What have you sold in Byron?" and the answer is 0. But I've got someone with 3 million who wants to look at your home. They don't even care about my pedigree, or you've got someone for my house. So my confidence, because I've got something in the pocket that they want, easy. So having buyers and a reason to call people makes things 10 times easier.
Yeah, that's awesome, mate. So product knowledge I got out of that was important. By servicing buyers, it also helped your list. One thing
I did the same thing when I started at Bresic in sales. I had a spreadsheet, buyers, spreadsheet, product knowledge. Every house that hit the market, what's the price guide? What do I think it'll sell for, and what did it get? I'll go and inspect as many as I could. I started getting barred from some of the open homes, which is fine. And then I got a handle on the market and I stopped attending. So it was just basically a way of doing it quickly. It's like compression.
How would you describe your listing? The way you list, your listing style. How would you describe it? Like I was really question based. How would you describe your listing style?
So when I moved here, I won my first 10 listings, right? So I had 10 and I won every 10. I didn't lose one. The reason I mention that is like my listing I really worked on. I've worked on it in Sydney and I worked on it here. I know any good agent, they're all the same. Maclay was really good at it. Alex is very good at it. You were always good at it. And always, I found
what made you are very good at it? What made you good at it? Like why? How are you good at it?
Yeah, no, it's good. So, I treat every listing like a game of chess, right? And if you move the same piece every time, you play the same card every time, you're not going to win. You're not going to be matching your opponent, if you know what I mean. You'll get rolled a lot of the time. So the only way to figure that out is by asking a shitload of questions. Right? Knowing what makes the owner tick. Because then when I know that, I can play that card or that hand, and then I'm going to put myself in the best position, right? I don't like agents that lie. I'll say something around that. I want someone who's a good negotiator. I hate auctions. I'm not going to suggest auction. Just those little things that are so obvious. It's like, I like auctions. If an owner hates an auction, I'm not going to go in there if I've got no runs on the board saying, you've got to do auction, which a lot of agents would do. Auctions work. It's like, if I do the right job, EOI, private treaty auction, it's still going to sell. Why am I going to push an agenda that they don't want to hear when I've got no credibility yet? Do you see what I mean? So I would go in, as opposed to that, I'd be going in with saying, here are my top 10 buyers. This is who I think will buy your house. Just so you know, I'm not the highest selling agent here. I only started here a few months ago. But all I did in Sydney was spend my time working buyers, and that's all I do here. And I was the #1 agent in Sydney, and I'd be doing exactly the same process here. And I've got 10 of them that want to see your house next week. And that was sort of it. I was super honest. I'd deal with my flaws before they found it out.
Yeah, you do.
You know, same in Sydney. I'd say, you might think I'm too busy and that I'm not going to turn up. I'll put in the agency agreement that I'll be at the open home, because I know the next agent's going to use that as a way of kind of discrediting me. So whatever it is, I'll deal with it, bring it out in the air, and then then the rest.
But you are very good at that. I must say, you are very good at calling out the elephant in the room, or whatever they say, and saying, well, let's
So
just
much better.
talk about this. Let's just talk about. Let's have a conversation. Let's get some comfort.
Because if you don't, you're doing this one saying, "Oh, hope that objection isn't what they're thinking." It's like, fuck it, I'll just say it, and then if they don't have an issue with it, then it doesn't matter anyway.
Do you, on that note, if we're talking about listing, if we talk about prospecting, if I said to you, Will, because people do everything right for prospecting or nothing, if I said to you, what are the best forms? If I was new in industry, or if I was selling 20 properties a year, Will, and I said, mate, what's the best form of prospecting? You've mentioned buyer work. What else would you put in there as the best areas to prospect, to build my database and to
My favorite saying for prospecting, the best form of prospecting is execution. You get a good result, so easy. Everything's so easy. But, so what I'll do, I'll sell something just sold. I'll send a text. So I'm exchanging one hopefully today. Just sold 7.1 million, sold 12 months ago for 6.5, 9% growth in 12 months, as short as I can. Very positive. Two buyers.
You'll text
two
that?
buyers. I'll text that. Two buyers missed out. If you'd consider selling, please call Will Phillips from McGrath. Right? Positive, informative, shows that we're good at what we do. Sold in 2 weeks when the average days is 3 months. Price growth.
Sorry, how many people would you text that to? Like, which group? Like, who do you not text and who do you text that? Everyone.
The neighbor. Yeah. And I'll just keep doing that.
Everyone who's a house owner in that suburb, they'll get a text message from you once you exchange it.
Yeah, because what I wanted when I started here is I wanted people to think that my activity and profile was probably more than what it was. They'd see me in the paper, they'd see me on Instagram, they'd get my text, they'd see me on realestate.com and go, this guy's everywhere. When in reality, I'm just promoting just listed, just sold, spending money on advertising. I'm trying to build my profile. And now it's people do say, you look like you've got, you do so much more than anyone else, but it's actually not the case. It's just what I'm trying to project.
Yeah, it's a perception, but you're doing everything. So for everyone listening, the best forms of prospecting, which I'm taking away, which I know, like him and I worked so closely together for so long, so I knew we'd probably end up here. Buyer work, working his current open homes and his auctions is a big one, or his current listings. Then when he sells it or he trades it, he's smashing that out to the market, text, email, calls. You're working a pipeline seller database as well, obviously.
Yeah.
You're working your buyer list. You still work your buyer list, Willie?
Yep. I've got a buyer that he's got up to 10, and I've chased him because he keeps saying he's coming to town. I'll chase him every 2 days. Are you coming? Are you coming? And then he texts me back saying, I've probably got time tomorrow, and I can show him a few things off market. That builds my credibility. If I just let that buyer go, there goes that opportunity to show an owner's house and show them that I'm working with good buyers. It's like, activity breeds activity.
Yeah. And so he also mentioned just listed, just sold calls, which I'm a big fan of, which we used to do a lot of, which work for the top agents as well as Will. That's really good, mate. Like, I've heard from you, I've heard from your brother, I've heard from James Ball, I've heard from Andrew Liddell. You all seem to say the same thing. More calls, more calls, more calls. Do you still feel that way? Now that you're sort of lifestyle family man, you're established now in Byron, I think you had a record month last month personally.
I'll be honest, I don't do prospecting calls. I'll just do the text or an email. So what I'll do is if I sell something on John Street, I don't call all of John Street and say, hey, I've just sold it. I literally do text.
Okay.
I could call and I would get more business, guaranteed.
Yeah.
I just don't want to. I've got enough of a pipeline, and I'm making enough sales that otherwise I'll be here till and I'm going back to where I was in Sydney, where I'm working crazy hours. So what I'll do is the benefit, the listings. So I've got 22 listings online at the moment. Most of them are price on request. The negative there is that that creates more work and it's not as good for the consumer. However, anyone that inquires, because we qualify so well, we're meeting pipeline sellers basically every day, because if they're in real estate mode here, there's a good chance they've got a property, particularly in the upper price points.
Yeah.
So I'm feeding my pipeline at a really healthy rate just by doing that, as opposed to doing the cold calls.
Yes.
So yeah, I think, could I be doing more? Yeah.
If you're a young agent and you're not Will Phillips, you would recommend calls more than texts.
That's what Pete and Georgia are doing. That's exactly what they're. Yeah, definitely. But
Yeah.
they're an extension of me. So in a way, I am doing it because I've got two people doing it for me. If that makes sense.
Pete and Georgie from Will Phillips' team, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's really good, mate. Just on the text thing, do people respond well to text, like owners?
Yeah, they do. Particularly when you say, like I'll often say, buyer in town next week, up to 7 million. They only want these streets. If you consider selling, please call me. Like and it's real. And it's like you just can't. You might. And it's because it's so efficient, and that's what I wanted to do when I moved up here. I wanted to use my time efficiently so I can leave and go do the stuff I want to be doing.
Yeah.
If I call those people, it'll take days. If I send a text, it takes 5 minutes, and I'm giving them what they want straight away.
Love it, mate.
Yeah.
Mate, do you still have goals, or do you kind of just go with the flow these days?
I never really. That's probably one thing I could improve at, like having written goals. Not really. No, I mean I'm super content. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like my goals is basically manage my work and family life well, and it's like I'm always doing it.
Good on you, mate. I love
With
it.
work, if I do the little things, the rest falls into place.
Yeah. So how important is this sort of, work, but then like you've got a family, but if agents don't have a family, are you promote, like say, I don't know about Pete and Georgie, but are you promoting that they should take time off, that they should have holidays, that they have half a day off a week? Or are you saying that in the early stages of your career, you have to hustle, and so there's no off, you have to be on 6 days a week and you get Sunday off?
Yeah. So I reckon, Pete has kids and I really encourage him. So we do a thing where we try and take every second Saturday off. So we actually rotate, which I'll get to in a minute about how I deal with balance. But he's got kids and I don't want him to suffer just because he's early. So, because he's early in his career. However, in general, if you're early in real estate, if you don't make, because calls is it. It's just that is the best way to get ahead. It's all those agents say it. It's what I did. It's what everyone else does. And that's just time. And if you don't put in the time, that's okay. You just won't get to where you want to be as quick and maybe as high that you might not get to those heights that you want. You just need to acknowledge that. And if you're in your 20s and you're prepared to do that and then suffer, sacrifice, then awesome. If you're in your 30s and you're starting real estate and you got kids, the journey's going to take a lot longer and it's going to be harder.
Yeah, that's just how it is. Yeah,
that's how it is. Yeah.
We
don't have to do anything. You've got a choice, but it's just be clear about what the repercussions or what the flip side is.
Yeah. Hey, a couple of quick questions. How many owners on your database?
Well, I use the group one. There's 5,000-7,000.
Gotcha. Okay, and that's shit. Do you love what you do? Like,
yeah, I do. I actually do. So when I had a year off, I was like, do I actually want to do real estate? I was like, fuck, like I was pretty over it, in Sydney.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, so here are my options. So I've just sold out. So I've got some money of Bressig Whitney. I can either start my own business and be an entrepreneur, or I can work for someone else, ask for holidays, have to be in at 9 o'clock, fucking have an hour lunch break because I'm not allowed, like, and the thought of that, I was just like, no way. So I was like, so I basically need to work for myself. And real estate, I mean, I didn't want to put a chunk of money down and lay my balls on the line and go back to square one, because I just put the family in a good position where I could have a good balance. If I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I need to put a lot down.
Yeah.
So I was like, in real estate, we've got no overheads, right? You've got
Yes.
you don't hold any stock. We can choose our hours. We can choose our holidays. We can make as much money as you want or as little as you want. And it really dawned on me how lucky we are.
Yeah, good on you.
So yeah, I could have done maybe the training thing, but given where I am and the property, I think I was super happy to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Love it. Like the deal thing is addictive. Like, there's no, and I love competing and kind of, you're always using your brain, strategy and all that sort of stuff. So no, I love it.
Yeah, it didn't surprise me. I mean, you like all those other things are options. I think you would have done good at whatever you did because of your ambition, your desire, just your intelligence around stuff like that. But mate, you've done exceptionally well and not surprising. Your alcohol, you and I have spoken about that over the last couple of years off air.
Yeah.
You haven't had a drink for 15 or 16 months.
No. So I started January last year, which I told you I was going to try a year off. I hate social media, but I saw this thing. I hate Instagram, and I really try not to look at it. I delete it from my phone and all that. But I saw something, and this guy talking. He goes, "Imagine you just gave 12 months, everything, work, diet," and I'm like, fuck, like, I'm like, 12 months isn't that long. I'm like, and that actually sparked it. I was like, what if I just gave 12 months to my health? Like, I'm drinking. I'm not that healthy. I'm eating shit. It's a loop. I'll do healthy during the week. Then I'll have, 10, 20 beers on the weekend or whatever it is. And then I'll eat like shit on the weekend and I'll feel crap on Monday. And it's like, then I'll be better. And it's like, So I think, yeah. So anyway, fast forward, I did a year and then I just kept going because it feels so good. And I don't think I feel like I've lost out.
Yeah. So Will wasn't a big drinker. He was a social drinker. He'd have some big nights. Is that fair?
No, I was a big drinker.
Okay. So, Will was
in my 20s and early 30s, I was like a proper binge, party, 4 or 5 a.m. mornings on weekends. And like when I had kids, it died down, but I would look for an excuse to find someone if I have a few drinks at dinner, like I'd hope someone would want to have a few more, go out for a bit. It wasn't like, it might be like a midnight or 1 a.m., but that could still be 10 drinks and I feel like shit the next day.
Mate, I love it. I'm alcohol free and I promote it, and I've loved that journey. What are the 4 or 5 or 3 benefits that if I was a drinker and I said, oh, what are the benefits? If I was, what would you say they are that have stood out to you in that time? Because that's pretty impressive. No drinks in 16 months for someone like you.
Yeah, mate, I think it's probably the up and down disappears. The mind clarity. The biggest for me though would be, let's say we're going out on Saturday night with some friends who love to drink and they just like having a good time. And it was today's Thursday, and I would be thinking, am I going to have a big one? Like, fuck, I wonder how I'm going to feel the next day. I've got something on Sunday. It's with the kids. I've been working all week and I'm going to feel like shit. I'll try not to have a big one, and then I'll get there and I'll have 3, and I'm like, and it's just like this mind thing that you tell yourself for either hours or days, depending on who you are. To me, it's like, it's just binary. It's like,
I know I'm going to dinner and I'm not drinking and I'll be fine. I can do whatever I want.
Not even a thought. And that is so refreshing. It's like, I know what my entire weekend's going to look like, because there's no choice I'm going to make that I can't control.
Well done.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I mean, the health benefits, the sleep. I think if we get anxious or stressed, I actually think you can have some drinks and forget about that anxiety and stress or that difficult vendor or the fact that you haven't had a good month. But by drinking, those feelings are only going to be worse 3 or 4 days later. Mate,
I also hate the fact that I'm not good enough to deal with that stuff without a substance. It's like, I feel like, like spiritually or mentally, I want to be able to deal with any issues with my own mind,
with
with
clarity.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, like go for a walk or whatever. I like to think that I need to rely on something to kind of de-stress. I don't know. It's not a good. That
Yeah,
doesn't sit very
you're
well.
saying to numb whatever you're feeling that
Yes.
feels a bit weak, or that's not going to
Yeah.
help. Rather,
Yeah.
just deal with things and the feelings with the clarity is quite. And
Yeah.
I think it's empowering. Like even just your energy is awesome. That energy I would imagine is there, whether it's 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock on a Saturday night with friends or whatever. So,
Yeah.
mate, it's
Yeah.
really good. I look, we didn't go through the numbers today, but I don't think we need to. Will's always been a top rider. He was one of the best agents. I was so happy to work with you, mate. So lucky when I think back now that
Thanks,
I
man. Yeah.
with you.
Yeah. You too.
I miss
Yeah.
you, man. I miss you. I really do. But I'm really happy that you're happy and that you're in a great place and you deserve
Thanks,
it.
man.
Mate, thanks for
Yeah.
coming
Thanks.
on today.
Let,
Keep
let me. I
it.
just want, let me just share something that I'd love to share. If I was an agent in Sydney, that I'd want to share around balance.
Or Melbourne or whatever.
Yeah, sorry, in the city, with that high pace. So I try and have every second Saturday off, every third. I think when you get, if you're at a level, where you're an attraction agent,
Yes.
you can actually do that sort of stuff. Like I get it if you're still grinding, but you can have more Saturdays off than what you think.
Yes.
I've got a second phone, so I'll get home at night and I'll turn my work phone off as soon as I walk in the door. And that's a big one. Like I feel like just because we leave the office, like we're never off. Unless I'm negotiating, I don't need to know what emails and texts I'm getting. And you see that little red thing, and that's been a big one for me, is just switching off.
Yes.
And the third one is I actually deleted emails from my phone. So if I want to find out where I'm in the office,
Yes.
or I can fire up my laptop at home, but I'm not going for a walk or having a sauna or watching a movie and I'm like, oh, who's emailed me? It's like the never ending, being switched on.
Yes.
And your presence with your kids, because you're always contactable.
Yes.
They've been game changers. So, I think that's worth considering.
So just three things to wrap that up. Will saying, yes, time off is important, half days, full days. Social media, he's not very present on that because he sees that as a distraction. He's got
Georgie runs my social media. I don't touch it. I have nothing to do with it.
So it's purely business. And you've put up boundaries through your weeks and whatever, so you don't get interrupted. I love it, mate.
Yeah,
I think it's
exactly.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming along. You're a legend. I found that really refreshing.
Thanks, mate.
Mate, good luck with the exchange today.
Thanks, brother.
And well done on the alcohol-free journey that you've been on. And mate, keep going, keep doing your thing.
Thanks, mate.
See you,
See you, dude. Bye.